Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the InnerViews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Ajax and Chelsea drew 4-4 at Stamford Bridge. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But now, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Chelsea 4-3-3. We have Pulisic, Willian, and Abraham up front. In midfield, Mason Mount, Jorginho, and Kovacic. Then we move to Ajax 4-2-3-1. Tadic up front ahead of Neres, Promes, and Ziyech. And in midfield, we want Martinez and Van der Beek. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and how Ajax went into halftime up 3-1. So when we break down Chelsea against Ajax, 8-goal thriller. When you do look at it, one of the key themes here is how both sides would approach the game. When we do look to the board, we have Ajax here in a 4-2-3-1, and that does lead to a bunch of matchups across the pitch. You have Tadic up front, and with Ziyech playing just a bit in behind him, that means that Ziyech is responsible for stepping to Jorginho. Then you have the midfield battle set, Mason Mount and Kovacic pressed by Van der Beek and Martinez, and the wider players in Promes and Neres running at the fullbacks. Those are wider direct players that are looking to run in behind. You have Neres who is looking to run at Alonso, Promes looking to run across Azpilicueta, and then, like I said, in the midfield zone, it was combative. So when we do look at it and we really assess it, you have to see how Ajax pressed, because the manner in which they pressed from the front did ensure that Chelsea struggled to create chances from open play. And there are two ways to look at it. The first way to look at it is the fact that you could have Neres blocking off the pass into Alonso but stepping to Tomori, which means that Tadic will end up stepping to Zuma, and that sees Promes stepping to Azpilicueta. In midfield, like I said, you have Martinez stepping to Kovacic when he does drop off a bit deeper. Ziyech did a very good job on Jorginho, so he was unable to play passes from deeper positions to break the lines. And then on the opposite side, Mason Mount was watched by Van der Beek. And if we do it on the flip side, like I said, you have Promes blocking off the passing lane to Azpilicueta and stepping to Zuma. You have Tadic stepping out into the path of Tomori, and then out in the wider zone, you have Neres stepping out into the path of Alonso, and everything is closed down. Tagliafico stepping to Willian to ensure that he couldn't turn on the ball, and then Mazraoui also stepping into the path of Pulisic, following them across the pitch, ensuring that they can't turn, which leaves Abraham in a 1v2 situation against Blind and Veltman. So that's how they went about it. That's how they looked to close down those spaces. Ziyech did a very good job in the sense that he was always helping Tadic step forward to press and close down, and also in the battle of midfielders trying to get the ball in key areas. Although he didn't really get the ball between the lines, he was the one that did get more space on the ball, playing passes out into the wider areas, trying to push his teammates forward. The issue here was that he wasn't influential, he wasn't dominating the game. But when you look at it from the other perspective, he was shutting down Jorginho, which was pivotal, and you have to give him credit for that. Chelsea, on the flip side, also did something similar. For example, we had Abraham stepping out to Veltman, and that would ignite Willian to try and block off Blind to ensure that he couldn't step forward. With that being said, if he does step out to Blind, that does leave Tagliafico free. And whenever Blind slid the ball out to Tagliafico, we would see Azpilicueta take a very long time to step out to him. However, the problem with Ajax was that Tagliafico couldn't find any markers to play positive passes to, because they were all marked out of the game, and it allowed Azpilicueta to step to him, and he did a very good job. And the same thing could be said on the opposite side. Let's say that Willian keeps his position and we have Abraham stepping out to Blind. You would have on the opposite side Pulisic blocking off the passing lane into Veltman for Mazraoui. And if he ended up getting that pass there, you could have Mount come across, you could have Alonso play a bit higher, then push Tomori into that space. That was kind of how Chelsea went about it. And Ajax also had problems building from the back, creating chances from open play. And the first half was all about a lot of transition, and obviously for Ajax, set piece execution. Because when we look at it and we see how they were able to get their goals, you really have to assess the fact that, well, before we even get to that, when we see how both sides look to press from the front, the key thing here is that each side, if they were able to get the ball over the press into the fullbacks and they're able to push forward, that is key. And we didn't see that enough, but that was a contributing factor to some chances. But like I said, when you really do look at the opening stages of the game, a lot of it does stem from mistakes. The first goal, we have Tagliafico being fouled by Azpilicueta, then Promes' free kick at the front post, sees Tadic attacking with Kovacic. They both miss it. It hits off Abraham, and Ajax are up 1-0 just like that. But when we see the press from Ajax, when we talk about mistakes, that is what ends up leading to the penalty that Chelsea are awarded minutes after that. So when we look to an example of Ajax press, we see Neres stepping to Alonso, and he ends up pulling the ball back to Tomori, who instantly clips the ball out of danger. We have Veltman stepping to Abraham, and the ball ends up bouncing over them and falling to Blind, but he nods the ball into the path of Pulisic, who ends up side-footing the ball beyond Mazraoui into the path of Mason Mount. Mason Mount's able to cut across him and poke the ball past Veltman, and when he runs towards Blind, what ends up happening there is that we have Martinez dropping off back to protect Veltman's space. What happens now is that he tries to play a reverse ball for Abraham, making the darting run in between Blind and Martinez, but what ends up happening there is that his pass is blocked and it ends up falling into the path of Pulisic, who is now able to break towards goal before Veltman takes him out, and then Jorginho converts the spot kick to ensure that Chelsea equalize seconds after going behind. But when we look to a positive example of Ajax's press, we see Tadic stepping to Zuma, we have Promes blocking off the passing lane into Azpilicueta, Ziyech dropping off with Jorginho, and Martinez following Kovacic into deeper positions. Zuma slides the ball out to Azpilicueta, and Promes tries to recover his run, but before he can recover his position, we end up seeing Azpilicueta play the ball forward into the path of Willian, but Tagliafico comes across to intervene, and when he blocks the ball, it ends up falling into the path of Promes, who drops it off to Martinez, and he's able to split Kovacic and Azpilicueta to find Ziyech, who is able to hold off Azpilicueta, and he slides the ball forward into the path of Tagliafico, breaking forward, and Jorginho takes him out. So that's a successful pressing scheme from Ajax. We saw that often, and Chelsea struggled to bypass them, and that was a big theme in that first half, is that their press was successful and Chelsea didn't really create many chances. So when we look to Ajax and see how they're able to create chances, we have to start with Daley Blind first. So when we look to Ajax, they did go a bit more direct because Chelsea's pressing from the front was effective for large spells of that first half. And there was one mistake from Chelsea where we end up seeing Daley Blind allowed the time to push forward, and he delivers a long ball for Tadic, peeling off Tomori, and Tadic does well to bring it down with his first touch and then get away from Tomori, but he ends up skying his effort over the net. And just like that, we get to see how easy it is for Ajax to play that direct ball if Chelsea don't press well, and that was key. When we look to the manner in which Ajax were able to go ahead, we see simple, direct football. It's Neres ahead of Alonso, dropping the ball off to Ziyech, and Mason Mount doesn't get to him in time. But when we look at the box, we have Tadic just in behind Jorginho. We have Van der Beek stepping forward, occupying Tomori. Mazraoui just ahead of Zuma, and then when you look at the back post, you have Promes ready to make a darting run in behind Azpilicueta. What's key here is Ziyech's ball across the 6-yard box and Promes' run. And when Promes makes that run just in behind Azpilicueta, he's able to connect with the ball from point blank range. Azpilicueta switches off, and that's how they're able to go ahead 2-1. But even when we look at the build-up to the third goal, we do see more direct football from Ajax. So when we look at it, it's Onana clipping the ball into Tadic, backing into Zuma, and Zuma does well to get a foot on it to poke it away from Tadic, and it ends up hitting off Tadic and falling to Alonso. When Alonso pulls out into that channel, you end up having Tadic stepping towards him to ignite that press, and we end up seeing Alonso clearing the ball off of his teammate in Mason Mount, and it falls to Mazraoui. When Mazraoui gets the ball, you have Again, Mason Mount occupied by Van der Beek, so he's able to bypass Van der Beek and Mason Mount to play the ball to Neres, who is now able to run at Alonso. Jorginho does shift over, and when they do shift over, we end up seeing Neres poke the ball in between Alonso and Jorginho for Tadic, who moves into that channel. And with Tomori and Alonso looking to close him down, Alonso does concede the foul, which allows them to get a free kick, and that ends up seeing Ziyech curl a superb effort off the far post and off Kepa to put Ajax up 3-1. But just like that, direct play from the start, that's how they're able to create their chances, and that's what separated Ajax from Chelsea, who constantly tried to play out of Ajax's press, but were just unable to get themselves into any quality areas. However, they did get one opening, and it kind of highlights how Ajax could switch off. So when we look at that, it's Zouma on the ball, and he locates Neres stepping out to Tomori, and he ends up clipping the ball over Neres into the path of Marcos Alonso. With Neres looking to come across, and we see Ziyech also coming across, Alonso locates Pulisic dropping off and pulling out Mazraoui. When he takes his first touch, he takes it towards the touchline, but what ends up happening there is that he turns away from Mazraoui and then runs across him before dropping the ball off to Jorginho, with Ziyech looking to step back to his marker. But Ziyech getting closer to Jorginho, Jorginho ends up playing the ball into Kovacic just ahead of him, and when Kovacic turns and sees that Martinez is a few meters away from him, he's able to split Martinez and a narrow Promes for Willian, who pulls out Tagliafico. When he pulls out Tagliafico, he ends up squaring the ball into the path of Azpilicueta, who now has space to push forward because you end up having Promes caught narrow, and that forces Tagliafico to step to him, and Promes is also looking to recover his space to close down Azpilicueta, which now frees space for Willian to dart into right half space. Azpilicueta plays the ball across Tagliafico for Willian to get to, and Blind does read it and come across. But even with Willian in this great area, you expect him to possibly take Blind 1v1 because he has the pace to do that, or to pull back a good pass into one of his attackers, but he ends up firing a low cross into the path of Onana, and Ajax are able to survive that breakdown from their pressing. When you break down that first half as a whole, both sides pressed well, but unlike Chelsea, who try to play through Ajax's press, Ajax were able to mix it up and be a bit more direct, and when they had opportunities to break in transition, they just looked a bit better than Chelsea. And the key factor here was that their set piece execution, whether you want to call it luck or not, was the difference maker in that first half. So when we look to the second half, Chelsea did make a change at halftime, bringing on Reece James for Marcos Alonso, which moved Azpilicueta to left back. And one of the reasons why you can't say that Lampard did go about this was that although Alonso and Azpilicueta weren't necessarily bad here, they could inject some athleticism and energy down the flanks because Promes and Neres were susceptible to being caught narrow. And like I said in the first half, one of the key outlets for both sides was that if you could get the narrow wide players looking to press and close down the center backs out of position, all you need is your fullbacks to push forward, to offer an attacking threat, to pull a player out of position. And that's what they want to do with Reece James, and he played a bit higher, and that was pivotal. But we also saw a different direction from Chelsea in that second half. One, they did go a bit longer and direct, and you have to look to Kovacic, who's dribbling in midfield, did help Chelsea move the ball quicker in those central areas. When we look to the first opportunity, it is Zouma being pressed, and when Zouma's pressed, instead of trying to play through the midfield, he clips the ball into the path of Willian. And although Tagliafico does win the header, he nods it into the path of Martinez, who does lose the ball to Kovacic. Kovacic now is able to slip in between Martinez and skip by Tagliafico before he does fall, but as he falls, he slides the ball into the path of Willian, who takes it on his thigh and skips past Martinez, running at Blind to slide the ball out into the right channel for Tammy Abraham. His cross is cleared by Mazraoui into the path of Azpilicueta, who does get the ball ahead of recovering Neres, and when his cross is delivered into the box, Martinez clears the ball upwards, Mazraoui clears it out into the path of Jorginho, who ends up sliding it back to Azpilicueta. This time, Azpilicueta locates Abraham in between Tagliafico and Blind, where he does have that aerial advantage, and he delivers a cross into the box for Abraham, who does tower over Blind, but he nods a tame effort at goal. A bit more direct from Chelsea, from Zuma clipping the ball out to Willian, to Kovacic's running, to delivering more crosses and getting the fullbacks forward, and that's what Chelsea lacked in that first half. Shortly after that, we see Azpilicueta step into a Van der Beek pass into Neres, and we have Pulisic cutting central across Van der Beek and Ziyech to drop the ball off to Kovacic. He's able to skip by Tadic, who does look to press him, and he slides the ball to the left of Van der Beek for Jorginho. Before Tadic can step to Jorginho, what ends up happening is that Jorginho slides the ball and breaks the lines in between Martinez and Pulisic in the middle and Van der Beek to find Kovacic again, who is able to drive forward now. He's able to drive at the center backs, and we end up seeing Abraham peeling off of Blind, and when Kovacic gets towards the center backs, he splits them with a pass into Abraham in right half space, but Veltman does a good job of recovering that run, and he applies enough pressure on Abraham that when he gets towards goal, he can only fire a tame effort at Onana that ensures that Chelsea don't cut into Ajax's lead. But in those two examples, like I said, you're seeing Abraham get into good positions, but not being the ruthless striker that Chelsea need, and it went back to haunt them because shortly after that, we see Ajax build on their lead. So when we look at it, it's Veltman breaking up a Mason Mount and Pulisic break that did stem from Mazraoui losing the ball in midfield, and Veltman ends up sliding the ball out to the Ajax right back, who pokes it into Tadic, drifting into the space towards the touchline. Tadic ends up playing the ball out to Neres quickly, and that pulls out Tomori, and when it pulls out Tomori, we end up seeing Neres drop the ball into the path of Ziyech. Ziyech now is able to have that space because once Tadic played the ball into Neres, he drove forward into the central position, and Jorginho did well to recover the space that Tomori was covering. And when he ends up getting the ball, Ziyech slides the ball across of Tomori into the path of Neres, breaking into that space. Tomori does well to hold him off, and although he does hold him off and clip the ball away from him, he's unable to clear it, and it falls into the path of Ziyech now, who's able to square the ball into Van der Beek, breaking into the box across of Jorginho. So Ziyech plays the ball across Jorginho, it falls to Van der Beek, and Kovacic is recovered, but he throws Van der Beek to Zuma. But what he doesn't know is that Tadic ends up making another intelligent run forward to ensure that Zuma has to take him, and we have Reece James occupied by Promes. So when that squared pass goes to Van der Beek, Kovacic doesn't react to it late. Van der Beek's first touch is good, and then he ends up firing a low-effort pass Kepa, and Ajax are up 4-1. It's a great goal, a Chelsea breakdown after they look to break forward, and that's how they were punished for not taking their chances. Shortly after that, we did see Chelsea make a change, bringing on Hudson-Odoi for Mason Mount, who did come off injured. Pulisic went into the central role just in behind Abraham, and we saw Hudson-Odoi move out to the left. Chelsea were more of a 4-2-3-1, and the midfield battle still was set in stone. We had Kovacic and Jorginho interchanging when they want to drop off deeper to pick up the ball, and whichever midfielder decides to drop off deeper, we would see Ziyech step to him, and then Van der Beek would get the spare midfielder, with Martinez monitoring the runs of Pulisic, who did look to drop off into pockets of space. But Chelsea were able to get back into the game following one main incident, and again, it stemmed from direct play. It's a Kepa punt into Ajax's half, and you have Abraham backing off into Blind. He's able to chest the ball down and poke it above Van der Beek into the path of Pulisic, who is now able to run in beyond Blind. Blind is able to shove him off, but once Abraham gets onto that loose ball, Blind goes across him and takes him out. Chelsea are awarded an advantage, and it sees Hudson-Odoi pick up the loose ball, and he cuts in on Mazraoui, and he fires his shot into to Veltman, and now Veltman is penalized for a handball. So in that entire sequence, Blind is now sent off for his second yellow for going through Abraham, and the referee decided to send off Veltman, whether it be dissent or for the handball. He was also sent off, and that forced Ajax into some changes. They went down to 9 men. Jorginho converted his penalty. Now they're only up 4-3. We saw Schürrle and Alvarez come on, and we saw Alvarez move into midfield with Martinez moving to center back with Schürrle. So now they're more of a 4-3-1 with Promes more to the left. You have Alvarez in the center of the midfield, and then you have Van der Beek to the right. But even then, they were unable to really reshape themselves based off the fact that Chelsea equalized shortly after that, a Willian corner kick that did see the ball knotted off the post, and Reece James fired the loose rebound past Onana, and now Chelsea were favorites to claim all 3 points. However, they were wasteful in the final third. Jorginho and Hudson-Odoi played diagonals to Willian to take on Tagliafico, but he delivered crosses into Onana. We had Abraham, who was able to get an aerial advantage over Martinez and Tagliafico, but couldn't knot his effort into the net. And even when Frank Lampard moved to a 4-1-3-2, bringing on Michy Batshuayi to partner Abraham so that both center backs could be occupied with an 11v9 advantage, Abraham and Michy Batshuayi couldn't make the difference. We had Jorginho play the ball into Michy, where he was able to isolate Martinez and turn him, but unable to beat the keeper. And with all that, we still saw Ajax get one good opportunity with Tadic beating Jorginho and Kovacic and then skipping past Tomori to play the ball back to Alvarez, but he could only first keep into a save after skipping past Reece James and Willian. But when you break down the game as a whole and you really assess it, it was a game of 2 halves. Ajax a slightly better side in the first half because their pressing nullified Chelsea's attack and their set piece execution ensured they went into halftime up 3-1. But when we move to the second half, the introduction of Reece James combined with Chelsea going a bit more direct rather than playing through Ajax's press did lead to both Ajax center backs getting sent off and allowed Chelsea to get back in the game. But when Frank Lampard does assess it, he may question why Michy Batshuayi was brought on a bit too late and why his front four were so ineffective in the final third in a game where they created enough chances that they possibly should have claimed all 3 points. But let me know what you guys think. Which one of these sides will feel like they did drop 2 points? And when you really look at it, do you think both of these sides are going to get out of the group, or will Valencia have something to say about that? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.